This is a video about the macroeconomics of grifting because it seems to me that we have arrived at the era of peak grift, where liars, cheaters, and charlatans will have an ever harder time selling their wares to unsuspecting audiences. And this is not good news. It should terrify absolutely everyone who is watching this video, because what happens after the collapse of the grifter economy is going to be so much worse than you could ever imagine. If you've been following this channel for a little while, then you know that I am something of a specialist in the rise of online wellness grifters who sell hope in exchange for telling you about their various discount codes. I've covered scam scientists and scam doctors and scam billionaires and scam influencers, and now we have a scam president. A few months ago, I reasoned that I could do a new video every week on a new scammer and literally be able to do that content for the rest of my life. But the relationship between grifters and their marks is changing right now in a fundamental way that has made me realize that the Griftoverse is barreling towards a collapse. To explain this, I want to start with a generally accepted definition of grifting, which is to make money through petty swindles and confidence tricks or other dishonest means, whereas a grifter is a person who engages in dishonest activity using charm or persuasion to manipulate others. In other words, at its very root, grifting is the monetization of lying. And we have seen a sharp rise of it in the last few decades, particularly among people who use social media to spread their scams. Now, on an individual level, we can point to lots of examples of how specific grifters have thrived. But what happens when we zoom out to the overall grifting economy, or if you will, the macroeconomic conditions that allow grifters to succeed? The one resource that all grifters share is a fundamental baseline of truth, or if you prefer, reality. Now, by definition, grifters monetize lies by subverting truth. Otherwise, it wouldn't be grifting. It would just be selling quality products that actually work. And herein lies a fundamental problem. For grifters to succeed, they need a stable base, which means a good economy, generally positive health outcomes, and enduring institutions, which ultimately earn the trust of the people in general. Grifters can only thrive by profiting off of the margins and the limits of that underlying foundation of trust. They capitalize on the cracks, not on the actual fully formed foundation. For instance, if Grant Cardone tells you that everyone can be a billionaire,
these guys pay $12,000 each to sit in that chair,
then you need an economy with a stable currency, a predictable rate of inflation, and markets where spending those dollars makes rational sense. And if Andrew Huberman tells you that the science of circadian rhythms means his blue blocking glasses will make you sleep better,
Roca and I designed these glasses,
then you need to realistically believe in the existence of credible sleep research that can actually help you optimize sleep. Or maybe you'll hear someone claim that you should ignore government public health advice around vaccines or Tylenol or whatever else, and instead trust their out-of-the-box thinking. This requires there to be a functional public health system that they can position themselves against. This kind of grifting is the main economic driver of most popular social media channels.
I want to tell you about All Family Pharmacy. Pick up what you need. Things like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, NAD+, methylene blue.
In the last 2 decades, it has become so rhetorically powerful that America elected a serial con man into office who immediately brought together a wrecking crew to fundamentally reshape the country in the image of a famous podcaster, grifter type person. I mean, many are literally podcasters, like Dan Bongino, the #2 spot at the FBI.
The FBI team did an amazing job.
And J.D. Vance is constantly on the podcast circuit.
We need to release the Epstein list. That is an important thing.
Along with RFK Jr., who only became mainstream after multiple appearances on the Joe Rogan show.
When I had heard of you in the past, there was this narrative. And this narrative was you were anti-vax and you believed in pseudoscience and you were kind of loony.
And that's not even touching on all of the appointees who come directly from commentator jobs at Fox News. These are pundits, not technocrats. And that movement from technocrats to pundits has undermined the public health agencies and gutted scientific research grants, deprofessionalized the professional military, made a joke of the Federal Reserve's independence, undermined the integrity of the Supreme Court, and reduced the ability of statisticians to even study key metrics in the economy and society writ large, so we know what is actually going on from a ground reality standpoint. In other words, the government has undermined the institutional stability and credibility that it took, 250 years to accrue. And this is leading to a weakening dollar, a weakening economy, fewer jobs, and a general mistrust of all government communication. And I'm even starting to think that any new science that comes out over the next few years during Trump's administration will be inherently suspect and biased, because the only science that is actually being funded somehow fits with the mission of a biased administration. For example, I'd like to point out Trump's recent announcement.
Today, we're delighted to be joined by America's top medical and public health professionals as we announce historic steps to confront the crisis of autism.
That taking Tylenol during pregnancy is the cause of autism, which is in part based on a study released by Harvard School of Public Health. Now, given that Trump has been waging a war to defund Harvard, it seems to me that the study was at least in part an attempt to curry favor with the administration. And even if I'm wrong on that, the mere appearance of corruption is all that it takes for anyone to be skeptical of the government's official communication on the matter. Now, add to this a proliferation of AI slop, state-sponsored propaganda from Russia, foreign actors, and even our own propaganda, and online scammers who have stolen more than $1 trillion in the last year. The net effect is that trust, the most important resource that grifters exploit to take your money, is being eroded at its foundations. Like any economic system, once you get an oversupply of one particular commodity, in this case grifting, it becomes increasingly difficult to make money in that niche. It's simple supply and demand. Now, in a stable society with reliable institutions, people look for ways to beat the system, where niche opportunities might let them get ahead. Sometimes they even succeed. But in a collapsing system, people need to seek out reliable information. And while I can't tell you where that reliable information actually is right now, I do know that the demand for it is higher now than it has ever been in my lifetime. Now, whenever I scroll through Threads or Blue Sky or my YouTube feed, the first question I ask is whether or not what I'm seeing is some sort of scam or propaganda. I think about the motives of everyone I come across and double-check everything I can to see if it coheres with reality. It is a constant task, and I think that you're probably doing the same thing, which leads me to the real problem with Peak Grift. Actual grifters, well, they're in a pickle. With confidence in their products naturally degrading, there are fewer opportunities for them to exploit their audience with new lies. Meanwhile, new grifters who are trying to establish their brands are facing stronger headwinds than grifters of the past. This means that people who are most active in the Griftoverse need to turn towards more aggressive tactics in order to continue to find unconquered territory to exploit and profit off of. So, where is that territory? Maybe you've heard the phrase, liars, cheaters, and thieves. Now, that phrase in English implicitly states it as a progression towards criminality. Liars turn into cheaters who eventually become thieves, and that's what we're seeing now. Now, a 1946 Supreme Court decision called Ballard versus the United States, which I've done a video about, essentially made it legal to lie and to sell products to people on the basis of free speech and a religious exemption. But cheating and stealing are still and always have been generally illegal in America. But the Trump administration, well, what we're seeing is he's changing that. Trump's use of presidential pardons. Let's just take that, for example. It's shown that he has an intent on overturning judgments against convicted fraudsters in his orbit that he sees as allies. And this has included Ross Ulbricht, who's the founder of the dark web marketplace The Silk Road, in the first month of his term, the reality TV stars Rod and Julie Chrisley, who defrauded banks for more than $30 million, and Devin Archer, who defrauded the Oglala Sioux Nation of South Dakota for $60 million in fake bonds, and that the courts have now ruled that they can't even seek restitution for. Trump is doing everything he can to enable these sort of criminal and bad actors, especially when he sees like sort of mutual profit in it. He's also deregulated cryptocurrency and even issued his own meme coin, which now serves as a backdoor to directly solicit bribes from foreign governments. This isn't even that controversial. Everyone sees it for what it is. And it would have been a huge scandal in past administrations. But we are so destabilized as a nation right now that we sort of accept it as a status quo. And now that lying is the baseline, we may have also reached the apogee of grifting, a time when coming up with new scams is harder and harder, and that outright criminality is the only logical next step. And that is what the future holds for us. Peak Grift means now the grifters, well, they're gonna be criminals. And that is all I have to say about that for today. Thank you so much for watching this quick commentary. If you want to support the sort of independent journalism I do here on this channel, I would love you to subscribe to my free Substack newsletter over at sgcarney.substack.com. And you'll get like early access to my stuff, which is great. And if you upgrade to become a premium member, you get early access to these YouTube videos before anyone else does. But you also get that warm and fuzzy feeling that comes with knowing that you're supporting this sort of journalism because, I mean, we live in a society where truth should matter. And I'm hoping you're part of that journey. And so many of you are. And thank you if you're already a member. From Pokey Bear LLC in Denver, Colorado, this was Scott Carney Pontificates.